Okay, the second reading is from Romans. So we've been going through Romans 8 all the way through the last several weeks. And now we're Romans 8, 28 through 30. Do you want to read, Sam?
Yeah. A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brothers and sisters, we know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called. For those he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. So what's the first thing that comes to mind when we say we know that all things work for good for those who love God? So what's the most terrible evil that we've ever seen? The cross, right? And it's turned out to be the greatest good. I mean, God can take even the greatest evil and use it for his own purposes for good. But I think we need to get into what does foreknew mean. There's foreknew, predestined, and I think that's where we got predestined, called, justified, and glorified. So foreknew, that's God's prior loving knowledge and intention. So that's God knew us, right? And what is he doing here? So that he may be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. So he's forming a family around him, in a sense. That's kind of what's going on. Predestined, and now this can be taken wrong. It's not fate. There's something called fate. But rather that's God's intentional saving plan. So God can have a plan, and he'll work within the human free will. We don't really understand that, do we? God's will is going to be accomplished, even amongst our free will.
Foreknew is the key word to the predestined, because time doesn't exist for him.
Exactly. Time doesn't exist for God. He is I am. Yeah. I am who I am. And so, if we're predestined, then it says we're called. So, and those he predestined, he called. And those he called, he justified. So, what does justified mean? Being put right with God, right? So we're being put right with God. And those he justified, he also glorified. So that's pretty amazing. So we're going to participate in the final glory. I mean, that's our destiny, is to be in heaven in glory with God and the angels and saints. That's what we're living for, right? We prefer heaven. So all this is not for no purpose. We're living here on earth, but we have hope for heaven. As Catholics, we're required to have hope for heaven. You're required to hope for heaven. Don't ever say, I'm going to hell. Don't ever say that. That is because as Catholics, you just, no matter where you are at, I'm going to be calling you. Are you going to confession? Am I going to confession? I'm going to call you. I'll be calling, because no matter where you go or what you do, stay in the state of grace. Because you don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow morning. Yeah, we'll put an angel tether on you.
He doesn't get close to church, we'll shock.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's important, though, because God has this figured out for us. And what's amazing is that God's plan is bigger than our plans. We don't even understand it. People think they're doing their own free will. But as you mentioned earlier that, I think you did, Bob, that certain things happen in history, but God will use oppression by different groups all throughout salvation history, and you'll see where the Jews are having problems and this and that, but God's punishing them for their sin by other countries. It was their free will, right, to do this, but God used it. It was beyond even what they understood. And what ended up happening is, as soon as he punished the Jews, they would get punished like 3 times worse. Yeah. That's typically what would happen in salvation history, right? it never worked out too well for him. But we can see where, we don't want to take this as fate, right? Well, I'm predestined for heaven. Because people get that wrong. They say, well, I'm predestined for heaven, so it doesn't matter. They're not, 10 Commandments don't matter. They're the suggestions now, right? Where in Scripture did it ever say don't follow the 10 Commandments? Will you ever find that? Show me. No, you will never find that. The only law that they put aside is some of the ceremonial laws, and Jesus even lifted that because he talked about things being unclean. He said, anything that I made clean, you cannot call unclean. When the sheet was in Acts, it dropped down 3 times, and he said, take and eat. And he had all the animals that he wasn't. And Peter said, I've never eaten any of these animals before. I'm a Jew. And in his vision, it said, take and eat. Because it's not about the ceremonial law. But throughout, when you had the Jerusalem Council, it said you must still, follow the certain acts of God. And the 10 Commandments were never eliminated. In the Catholic Church's teaching, you always have to follow the 10 Commandments.
What makes them think they're predestined for heaven?
What's that?
Well, where do they get the idea where they're predestined?
Well, they said,
Because of why? It's not written somewhere, like, do they find their name someplace or something? How do you, what?
well, the Jehovah's Witnesses think there's 144,000 in heaven because it's in the book of the Revelations or the Apocalypse.
But where do they think, like?
If you got a private revelation, you can believe anything you want.
So all these people who say they're predestined all have private revelations?
No, typically most of the people that are in these different Presbyterian churches, they don't even realize that they believe in determinism. That's what it's called, determinism. And they don't even realize that is the basis. So when you have a philosophy, there's certain tenets that are the premises. So you have premises of arguments. And they don't understand that the premise is that there's predestination, or once saved, always saved, or I'm only saved by the Bible alone. They came up with these things randomly. Where did they come up with them? Maybe one verse here, one verse there. And they use one verse out of context as the basis of what they're believing. And I could come up with a lot of things, if it doesn't fit the way I'm living, well, I want to live this way. I can look around and pick and choose and say, well, this kind of fits what I want to do. And so that's why for 2,000 years we try to stay in the Catholic tradition, because you have the magisterium. When I'm teaching, it's from the saints and the doctors of the churches and from commentaries that are, approved all the way through. For 1,500 years, nobody believed not in the true presence. But once they lost, once Luther and the rest left, they no longer could have priests or holy orders. They no longer could have a valid Eucharist. And even Luther said if it wasn't for the Catholic Church, we wouldn't have the Bible alone at all. Because you can't have the Bible coming from just anyone. The Bible was chosen out of, I think, 300 books. The books that we have in the New Testaments, they were chosen from a vast array of books, and they said these are canonical and these are not. And the ones that aren't canonical, they're a good read, but they're not canonical. They might have some interesting stuff in them, like, the Book of Enoch or something, but but it's good. It's not bad to read them. And there's certain things that come from them. So, for example, we're celebrating St. Anne, and I think that came from, there's a book from James, that was very early on, that they learned some information about St. Anne. And so it's not wrong, but it's not canonical books. And so we have an infallible church that declared these are the books that are divinely revealed and are part of the Bible. And these are, and these aren't. And so we followed that all the way through. And have we had bishops and popes that have been a little bit off in their teaching? Yes, definitely. And do we have now? There's a saying, and I mentioned it more than once, that the skull, that the road to hell is paved with the skulls of dead bishops. This was told in the Middle Ages. This is nothing new. Pray for your bishops, pray for the Pope, because think of the attacks they're getting. If you got somebody that's leading all of his sheep, and if they can get him to go astray, Satan just hit it's like hitting the jackpot, right? So that's what he wants to do. He wants to take the leaders out. So we're required to pray, and we should be praying for our civil leaders too. So anybody that's
Can
Yeah, pray for yeah. I mean, we need to pray for the civil leaders. We should be praying for our government leaders. We're required. It says right in Scripture to do that. But I think this is important. So we've been going through Romans 8, and it's very rich with a lot of content, and it can be taken out of context, though. And so when you're only reading 2 verses, you can say, well, it says here predestined. Well, maybe I won't lose my salvation. So if you can't lose your salvation, does it really matter if you sin? No. I'm going to heaven. Once saved, always saved. I actually had someone tell me, they had the audacity to tell me, Jesus paid so I can play.
Oh, wow.
If
That's
you're
bold.
Pentecostal person,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's, think about that. I didn't see that in Scripture, right? If it's Bible alone, where'd you come up with that? I mean, actually, where is marriage pronounced? That's not in Scripture. They follow that. They're following tradition, right? And so we won't get into all that different aspects of it, but we have to be careful that we don't take things, as our own revelation, and then we can twist it to our own destruction. And that's actually what Peter said. Many take the words of Paul and twist that to their own destruction. And so we have to be careful. That's why when we read that, we want to read it with commentary that's accurate and that's gone through the test of time.